Remember when Halloween wasn't just a night but an entire adventure? Picture this. It's 1985, and you're sprinting down the street in your plastic Ghostbusters costume, pillowcase in hand, ready to score the mother load of candy. No smartphone tracking your every move, no worries about allergens or sugar content, just pure, unadulterated Halloween bliss. But wait, there's more to this time-traveling treat. We're about to unwrap the full-size candy bar of 80s Halloween memories. From the smell of those vinyl masks to the thrill of watching Halloween 2 at a sleepover, we're diving into why Halloween was the ultimate kid holiday back then. Ready to trick-or-treat your way back to the future? Remember when Halloween meant digging through your closet instead of scrolling through Amazon? Back in the 80s, costume creation was a whole different ballgame. Picture this. You're standing in front of your bedroom mirror, draped in a bed sheet with 2 eye holes cut out. Congratulations, you're now a ghost. Or maybe you've raided your dad's closet, slipped on his oversized suit jacket, and suddenly, you're a miniature businessman. That's the magic of 80s Halloween costumes, simple, creative, and oh so charming. Fast forward to today, and Halloween costumes have become a multi-billion-dollar industry. Parents are shelling out big bucks for elaborate, ready-made outfits that look like they've stepped right off a movie set. While these costumes are undoubtedly impressive, they've lost that homemade touch that made 80s Halloween so special. Gone are the days of cobbling together a costume from whatever you could find around the house. Now, it's all about who can buy the most authentic-looking superhero suit or Disney princess dress. But let's rewind to the 80s, where creativity reigned supreme. Kids would spend weeks brainstorming and putting together their perfect costume. A cardboard box could become a robot, a trash bag could transform into a witch's cloak, and a pair of bunny ears could turn you into any animal you wanted to be. The possibilities were endless, limited only by your imagination and what you could scrounge up from around the house. And here's a fun little tidbit. Remember those plastic masks with the thin elastic band that always seemed to snap at the worst possible moment? They were a Halloween staple in the 80s. Sure, they made it nearly impossible to breathe and fogged up faster than a car window on a cold night. But hey, that was all part of the Halloween experience. One of the best things about 80s Halloween costumes was their longevity. Kids would often wear the same homemade costume for years, adding to it or modifying it slightly each time. Maybe last year's cowboy costume got a new bandana this year, or the robot suit got an upgrade with some tinfoil antennas. It wasn't about having a new costume every year. It was about the excitement of bringing your creation to life again and again. The freedom and simplicity of 80s costume choices meant that Halloween was less about impressing others and more about having fun. You didn't need to worry about having the most expensive or elaborate costume on the block. Instead, you could focus on the important stuff, like mapping out the best trick-or-treating route to maximize your candy haul. But here's the real treat. Those DIY costumes weren't just fun, they were also secretly building important skills. Kids in the 80s were unknowingly flexing their creative muscles, problem-solving abilities, and resourcefulness every time they put together a Halloween costume. They learned to think outside the box, or sometimes to think about how to turn a box into a costume. These homemade creations fostered imagination in a way that today's store-bought costumes just can't match. Speaking of thinking outside the box, let's talk about what kids in the 80s thought inside the case. The pillowcase, that is. Ever wondered why your parents get nostalgic about Halloween candy hauls? It might have something to do with the unconventional candy carriers of their youth. Back in the 80s, trick-or-treating gear was all about simplicity and practicality. Kids would grab either a plastic pumpkin or a pillowcase before heading out for their Halloween adventures. Those iconic orange plastic pumpkins, often associated with McDonald's Happy Meals, were a popular choice for younger trick-or-treaters. But for the serious candy collectors, nothing beat the humble pillowcase. Why a pillowcase, you ask? Well, it was all about maximizing that sweet, sweet candy capacity. Older kids knew that a pillowcase could hold way more loot than any store-bought container. Plus, it was free and readily available in every home. No need for fancy, branded bags or special Halloween buckets. Just grab a pillowcase off your bed, and you were good to go. Now, contrast that with today's Halloween scene. We've got branded bags featuring the latest cartoon characters, glow-in-the-dark buckets for added safety, and even teal pumpkins to indicate allergy-friendly treats. While these modern options are undoubtedly cute and functional, they lack that DIY charm that made 80s Halloween so special. But the real magic happened when kids returned home with their pillowcases bulging with treats. Picture this. You've just gotten back from a successful night of trick-or-treating. You rush to the living room, barely able to contain your excitement. Then comes the moment of truth. You dump out your entire candy haul onto the floor. The satisfying thud of a full pillowcase hitting the carpet, followed by the cascade of colorful wrappers spreading across the floor. It was a sight to behold. This candy dump wasn't just about seeing your loot. It was a social event. Siblings and friends would gather around, comparing their hauls, negotiating trades, and creating their own little candy economy. I'll trade you 2 Snickers for a Reese's. Anyone want to swap their Smarties for my Tootsie Rolls? It was like a mini stock exchange, but with much sweeter dividends. And let's not forget the friendly competition that came with using pillowcases. Kids would try to outdo each other by filling the biggest pillowcases they could find. Some clever trick-or-treaters would even bring king-size pillowcases, hoping to set a new neighborhood record for candy collected. It wasn't just about the quantity, though. There was a certain pride in having a pillowcase so full you could barely carry it home. But perhaps the best part of using pillowcases and plastic pumpkins was the freedom it represented. Without expensive or fancy containers to worry about, kids were free to roam far and wide in search of the best candy. They could plan elaborate routes through the neighborhood, hitting up all the houses rumored to give out full-size candy bars. This freedom to explore and make decisions fostered a sense of independence that's often missing from today's more supervised Halloween experiences. But the freedom of 80s Halloween went beyond just choosing your candy bag. Picture this. Groups of kids, no adults in sight, roaming neighborhoods well past dark. Unthinkable today, but it was the norm back then. What changed, and what did we lose in the process? Did you know that back in the 80s, kids could trick or treat without being constantly tracked by smartphone apps? It's true. Halloween night was a time when children experienced a level of independence that's hard to imagine in today's world. Parents would send their kids out into the neighborhood with a simple, "Be home by 9," and that was that. No GPS tracking, no constant check-ins, just pure Halloween freedom. Now, let's fast forward to today's Halloween scene. We've got supervised trick-or-treating with strict time limits, parents hovering nearby, and the rise of controlled events like trunk-or-treating in parking lots. While these modern practices certainly prioritize safety, they've also stripped away much of the adventure that made 80s Halloween so thrilling for kids. Remember the excitement of exploring your neighborhood late into the Halloween night? Kids in the 80s would venture far beyond their usual boundaries, discovering new streets and even neighboring areas. The thrill of being out after dark, guided only by the glow of jack-o'-lanterns and streetlights, created an atmosphere of mystery and excitement that's hard to replicate in today's more structured celebrations. It's fascinating to see how parents' Halloween safety concerns have evolved since the 80s. Back then, the focus was primarily on checking candy for tampering, making sure costumes were visible to drivers, and setting a reasonable curfew. Today's parents have a whole new set of worries: stranger danger, allergies, social media risks, and more. The 1980s saw a shift in Halloween safety awareness, particularly after the Tylenol tampering incident, but the emphasis was still on basic precautions rather than the comprehensive safety protocols we see today. The sense of adventure that 80s Halloween fostered was truly something special. Kids learned to navigate unfamiliar streets, make quick decisions about which houses to visit next, and work together in groups to maximize their candy haul. These experiences weren't just fun. They were valuable lessons in independence, problem-solving, and social interaction. Believe it or not, this freedom actually helped kids develop important life skills. Roaming the neighborhood on Halloween night taught children to be street smart, to read social cues when interacting with strangers, albeit briefly, and to manage their time to make it home by curfew. They learned to work as a team with their friends, watching out for each other and sharing the excitement of their Halloween adventure. Those Halloween adventures were concentrated into a single electrifying night. Now, imagine the anticipation building for weeks, only to discover that modern celebrations have lost their spark. What changed between then and now? The transformation of Halloween from a night to remember into a month-long commercial spectacle holds some unexpected revelations. Can you picture a time when Halloween wasn't a month-long extravaganza? Back in the 80s, Halloween was a one-night-only event, and boy, was it special. Kids would spend weeks dreaming up costume ideas and planning their trick-or-treat routes, all for that one magical evening. The build-up was intense, with excitement reaching fever pitch as October 31st approached. Now, let's fast forward to today. Halloween decorations start popping up in stores as early as September, and some folks keep their spooky decor up well into November. It's like Halloween has become a season rather than a single night of fun. While this extended celebration might seem like a treat, it's actually diluted the holiday's impact. Remember flipping through those Halloween catalogs from Sears and Kmart? They were like sacred texts for 80s kids, fueling our imagination and helping us plan the perfect Halloween night. We'd spend hours poring over the pages, circling our favorite costumes and decorations. It was all part of the anticipation, the delicious wait for that one special night. But here's where things get really scary. And we're not talking about haunted houses. The Halloween industry has exploded since the 80s. In 2022, Americans were expected to spend a whopping $10.6 billion on Halloween. That's billion with a B. It's a far cry from the modest spending of the 80s when a few pumpkins and a homemade costume were all you needed for a spooktacular time. Speaking of decorations, remember when a couple of jack-o'-lanterns and a cardboard skeleton on the door were considered going all out? Nowadays, some folks transform their entire homes into elaborate haunted houses, complete with fog machines, animatronics, and professional-grade special effects. It's impressive, sure, but it's also a far cry from the simple charm of 80s Halloween decor. Here's the thing about having just one night of Halloween. It made the whole experience more intense and memorable. When you knew you only had a few hours to trick-or-treat, every moment counted. You'd race from house to house, trying to hit as many as possible before your parents called you in. The limited time frame added an element of urgency and excitement that's hard to replicate in today's extended Halloween season. But it wasn't just about the candy rush. That one night of Halloween fostered a sense of community that's often missing from modern celebrations. Neighbors would gather on porches, complimenting costumes and catching up while handing out treats. It was a chance for the whole neighborhood to come together, creating shared memories that lasted long after the jack-o'-lanterns had been extinguished. So, what have we learned from our trip down memory lane? While modern Halloween offers more options, we've lost some of the magic of simplicity and anticipation. But here's the thing, you can still recapture that 80s Halloween spirit today. Why not try making your own costume this year? Or grab a pillowcase and go trick-or-treating with your kids. You might be surprised at how much fun it can be. Remember, at its core, Halloween is about joy, imagination, and community. Whether you're reliving your 80s childhood or creating new traditions, the thrill of dressing up and indulging in sweet treats never gets old. So this Halloween, why not mix a little retro charm into your celebrations? After all, some things are just too good to leave in the past.